Yeah, we can start. Kindly unmute yourself, Sneha.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our interactive session on understanding policy advocacy and policy research from the practitioner's approach. Today's session is going to be a very interesting and enlightening session as we have with us a very special guest speaker, Pankhuri Anand. Pankhuri has a wide spectrum of experience in the field of policy research and advocacy. Previously, she has worked at Teach for India, a charity committed to eliminating educational inequity in India. She taught a low-income primary school for 2 years and continued working as a school leader for another 2 years. She also has worked as an MPA consultant at UNESCO, completed a summer internship at People Foundation, and also worked as a research intern at an UK-based foundation called Wonder Foundation. Her work is very inspiring and motivating for all of us. Working at the grassroots level in education made her realize that she is most excited while working to solve educational inequity. This made her realize that she wanted to study policy to understand and bring large-scale impact. She was particularly interested in figuring out how on-ground work can improve how on-ground work can better inform evidence-based policymaking and how to fix the breakdown that happens while implementing a policy. Outside of work, she enjoys traveling, cooking, and hiking mildly difficult terrains. So now I would hand it over to Yashasvi, who is working as the team lead for Project Vedana. Over to you, Yashasvi.
Thank you, Sneha. And I once again, on behalf of Team Sarkari School, welcome our revered guest, Pankhuri ma'am. Now, I would like to shed a brief light upon the organization. Sarkari School, under the aegis of We Citizens Foundation, is an initiative that seeks to bridge the difference between government schools and Indian society. There exists today a shadow of stereotypes around Sarkari schools and their impacts. A poor narrative that overlooks their success and solely focus on their inadequacies. Sarkari school aims to shift this narrative by equipping the readers with the facts and resounding hope and support. It aspires to begin a constructive dialogue between educators, policymakers, Sarkari school students, and teachers, amalgamating all the ideas and episodes into feasible solution towards the social club. We have a multitude of projects under the wing like Project Vedana, Project Guriya, Project Sahyog, etc. that aims to uplift government schools, and we are sure that this session would greatly advance that aim. And we are looking forward to learning from you today, Pankhuri ma'am. So I hope this session would inspire our teams, viewers, and help us to learn, grow, and bring a change. Now, I would like to call Ria to shed light upon our Policy Advocacy and Research Team. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Yashasvi. So I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, to welcome our guest speaker for today, Ms Pankhuri Anand. And I welcome her on behalf of Sarkari School and Policy Advocacy and Research Team. So our team believes that learning through developing and interaction and learning from personalities like you. And thus, in the same spectrum, the Policy Advocacy and Research Team that engages in various conferences like Youth Conference, G20 Conference, or weekly interactive sessions like Policy Manthan. The primary work of our team involves producing quality research papers and research articles around education and educational institutions. The work seeks to highlight the gravity of policy planning in all spheres of development and especially on government schools and education. We achieve this through rigorous and intensive research and a lot of brainstorming activities, and thus this session will definitely prove to be an emanating fuel and power charge for our upcoming researchers. So we really look forward to this insightful policy perspective session with you, ma'am. Thank you. Over to the hosts.
So ma'am, now you can start with your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Sneha, Yashasvi, and Ria. That was really helpful, very interesting insights from what you're doing, everything that you're coming together to create. Very helpful. Also, just a couple of things that I wanted to mention before I start. One, please just call me Pankhuri. And second, not an expert really in the field, have really kind of just started working in the education space here. My work earlier was more on ground in education in India. So really, I'm really hoping that yes, the expectations from this session are not very high. I believe Abhishek mentioned that all of you are actually currently studying. Our college students, so you probably are much more aware of the nitty-gritties and the framework and all of that. I probably bring in some information from the working sector, but yes, not an expert. Perfect. I just wanted to share my screen. I have a small presentation just covering the basics of policy research and advocacy. Perfect. That's me sharing my screen. Okay. And can everyone see my screen? Just a thumbs up or a yes works.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So what I'll do is I'll take quickly, I think Abhishek mentioned that it's good for me to kind of take 15 odd minutes to go through this. It'll probably take fewer than 15 minutes. And then we can just kind of have an open Q&A. So I thought I'll just very quickly go through my journey as to where I am right now. I graduated in 2012, graduated in management, and even I think at that point I was quite interested in the education space. I came across Teach for India in my second year of fellowship, and I was quite intrigued by what they did. Just a little bit of more background information. So I grew up in Jharkhand, grew up in a very, very small town, and I think even growing up, I realized that I was definitely more privileged than a lot of other children who were definitely much more talented, much more interested in studying. So while that was an awareness that I had with me, I also realized in my own school, and again, I went to a private school, which is again a very, very common thing in India. I realized that teachers were and this is not really a blame, this is more just an observation, as a child, were very biased in the sense that, okay, this child does really well in maths. This particular child should also participate in drama and cricket and running and sports, and that wasn't very fair. Anyway, so that was, those were some of my observations growing up. When I finished my undergrad degree, I was quite interested in joining Teach for India, went for my first did my first application right outside of college, didn't get through. It was extremely competitive and terrifying at that point, sitting through the application process and watching everyone give their sample interviews. Anyway, I worked for a marketing company for 3 years, but towards the end of that, I realized this is not my thing and I wanted to work in education. Applied again, got through, and I started my Tier 5 fellowship in 2015. It was easily the best, the most purposeful work that I think I did. And it was a turning point in my career because even when I finished my management degree and my family was like, okay, let's get an MBA. It's just an obvious thing to do. I knew that's not what I wanted to do, but I just wasn't sure what is it that I wanted to do. So I think Tier 5 really helped define that. I am pretty sure that I want to work in education, even though I currently am in London. I plan to come back and work in India. And yes, education is where my interest lies. I worked as a fellow, which is essentially you work as a teacher. I taught grade 4 and 5, and started off with this whole, okay, teachers don't know how to teach, they don't know how to work and all of that, and ended my fellowship with, oh, they have a lot of burden on them. They don't have enough support. They don't have enough guidance. They don't get paid enough, because mine was a private low-income school where I taught in Mumbai, in Mankur. So just as I was finishing up my fellowship, Tier 5 started, they were piloting this program called Assistant School Leadership. Essentially, you would be placed in a school and you work with the school leader to help try to do what you did with your classroom with the entire school. And that felt like a very, very natural step for me. And I was very interested in working with teachers. And so I did that for 2 more years. Definitely the most, I think another 2 very, very challenging years with, I think, not as much impact as the fellowship, because fellowship is slightly more structured, slightly you have a little more control. And this was the very first time they were trying out something. So even they weren't, TFI wasn't sure of the kind of support that we would need. And but I think those 2 years definitely gave me a lot. I came away with very, very strong understanding of challenges that teachers face. I'm not saying an exhaustive understanding, but definitely there was a lot of sympathy with the school system, with everything that teachers go through. And yeah, so by the time I think I finished my 4 years with them, I was again, like I said, quite sure that this is what I wanted to do. So I thought I would probably would like to study policy to understand a little bit more if I want to work in this space and I want to work on scale, how do I equip myself? And then there was a question of, okay, do you I looked at education policy degrees or specifically just public policy degrees, and I ended up choosing public policy, just thinking that this will give me an idea of a broader spectrum of things that go around that affect education. And that's where I ended up. I did my public policy, public administration degree. I finished in 2021. And then I started working here. I came back, I went back to India, then I got back here again. And since then I've been working with an organization called Nesta here. They work in education, health, and sustainability. I work in the education department. And again, the goal is to close the disadvantage gap. And yeah, it's easily defined here. So we know what when they say disadvantage gap here. So that's more or less, hopefully quite quick, my story. And just diving into policy research, policy advocacy. Just keeping, I mean, when we talk about a policy, any sort of policy or public policy, the core of this is people, right? There are health policy, infrastructure, economic, education, everything that always impacts people. So that is, yeah, the core of it. Looking at policy research, what does it entail? I'm sure if you ask different people, everyone will come up with their own different understanding of it, and probably how they use it in their work. My basic understanding of policy research is that it's something that it's timely and relevant. So something that happened today, a policy change that happened today, if you speak about it probably a year from now, not as timely and impactful of what was the what it may or may not, the kind of influence it may have. Policy research, so research is basically just trying out more kind of information about something in a very, very simple way. So yes, essentially, if there is a policy change that may happen, we're looking at the influence and impact it may have on someone who it's more relevant to. And policy research is also something that's very, very practical and action oriented. Once you research, let's say, a certain change that was brought up, for example, when free education, primary school education. So you look at, okay, this is what the policy came in, this XYZ will be the practical next steps of this policy, or how to go about it. That's roughly what we look at what we mean when we say policy research. And then we have policy advocacy. In short, advocacy is just like, this is what I think is right, let's do this. So in short, policy advocacy is this is the policy that I believe in. And we either want everyone who is in power to either make that change and bring in our policy, or if the policy exists, then to implement it, or sometimes it's just to maintain the status quo. This is the policy, this is how we want it to stay. Whenever I just think of policy, it always involves lobbying. Lobbying is just kind of essentially telling people, this is it, do this, and that's kind of it. Negotiating, mediating that, how can we arrive at the best possible thing that I want? And it involves civil servants, policymakers, lawmakers. A very simple example of policy advocacy, which has kind of always stayed with me, is, and that's a very big example of lobbying, in the US, the car, so the public transport in the US is quite poor, except for the New York City, which has a good public transport, and that is down to just simply the lobbying by car manufacturers. They want everyone to just buy cars, and obviously if there is better public transport available, people will not use as many vehicles, and that's just lobbying. And even as of today, in 2023, that's just how strong the car manufacturer, their lobbying is. And you don't have excellent public transport everywhere. So that's roughly my understanding of policy research, policy advocacy. I will go into next 3 or 4 slides that will just essentially kind of give you a little more detail, a little bit more tools, and how to probably do this. Again, definitely not an expert in policy advocacy. Research is a very, very core fundamental part of my work, so I understand that a little bit more. But yeah, please jump in if you have any questions now, or of course we can take them later. Okay, just looking at what policy research involves, or in general what research involves. The aim of a policy research is like very, very simple, right? You just aim to understand more about something XYZ that has been proposed. What will be its impact? How will it influence someone? What will be the positive or negative impacts? When we undertake policy research, so again, research is something, it can take days, months, even years. And so we just need to define that, okay, so I start up a project. So for example, we need to find out that midday meals, are they being administered of good quality? So it can take a long time, but if you're left, for example, your project is just 3 months long, so you will put in your time, and that, okay, I finish off my research in a month. And also depending on how much detail you're looking for, so that kind of defines how much time you end up spending on, let's say, your research. You look at when you're looking for research, one is obviously your desk research, then obviously you have your primary research. But just looking at your, just talking about the secondary desk review, you always look at a range of databases. And obviously there are some that are quite popular, which I have listed down in the next few steps. You look at your exhaustive set of keywords. I'm looking at teacher training, so I look at all different types of keywords related to that. I will come up with, let's say, 4 to 5, because again, we're not doing a very academic, very a long, rigorous academic research, so we don't need like 15 keywords, right? But yeah, probably definitely play around with 4 to 7, and that kind of definitely helps. How do we find out if the research that we are looking at, what we are reading, is credible? One, obviously, you sometimes set a year of publication, right? I only want to look at papers in the last 10 years and the last 20 years. That obviously is based on the context of your what you're looking to find. Obviously, if you're looking to find something from the last 1970s and the change in policy, then obviously that's what you look at. But anything that I'm looking to research now, I'll probably look at the last 10 or 20 years, mostly not beyond that. You look at citations. So the older the publication, if it's good research, it will definitely have more citations. Who is the publisher is just simply, I think, and peer reviewed. So essentially, so journals definitely usually mention that on their website. You will find it if they have peer reviewed journal articles or papers there or no. And putting that in a very, very simple words, I think that would just be like buying anything, even if it's like buying a pack of biscuits. You look at how old it is, right? Peer reviews essentially just people saying, oh yeah, you know what, this biscuit is really good. That's, I think, similar citation here would be, do you see it in multiple people's houses? Do they use it? And publisher is just essentially who's selling it. If this is a brand that you think is quite credible, well known, obviously you'll be like, yeah, let's close my eyes and just always buy Parle-G. It's great. Okay, and So I think one of the questions that Abhishek shared, it had something about how do you stay focused or how do you do a lot of it. I think that was research related question. I think something that I learned from during my degree and more so I think in the work right now is the way to go through quickly these research papers. They can be, and I have examples here which we can look at it in a bit. Usually most of these papers are, if not 40 pages or more long, and you definitely don't need to read the entire paper. The quickest way to go about it is most good papers will have a very good abstract which will tell you what they were looking for, what they did, and what they found. So that just sets a very, very good benchmark there that this is all your information. And then just based on your research, what kind of, are you doing more of a rigorous research, or just getting an idea, or like a quick scan, quick review? You can then choose to focus more on, are you looking more for methodology? What is it that you're looking for more? Are you just looking for evidence? So based on that, you just quickly look at methodology, you look at results. Sometimes they have good discussions, implications, if you need that for, let's say, forming your opinion that, okay, this is what the implication on a certain policy may mean. So that's a quick way of kind of reviewing a paper. And I think in terms of whenever you do your own research, there's a lot of emphasis on, okay, this is what the paper said. You should always definitely look at what they mention as their strengths and limitations. And then what did you think? So I'm sure you already know this, but there's a lot of value that you will add. So for example, especially if you're looking to work as a policy analyst for members of parliament, I think the briefs, what they look for in a policy brief is, there's a 60-page report that came out, 120-page report that came out. You need to give a one-pager to your superior, and it essentially needs to give the facts. And then what do you think? So critically reviewing something, that what do you think works? What do you think doesn't work? So that's policy research. Sorry. Just quickly looking at types of, even I was searching on Google what are the different things of types of research that one looks at. So this is obviously the most common category, but this is also something that you most commonly refer to or speak of when you are working, especially I think not so much in academia. Academia will probably have 20 different categories again, but essentially, again, nothing new. You've heard of it, quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods. As the name suggests, quantitative is more about analyzing numerical data. You collect it through polls, questionnaires, surveys, experiments, interviews, existing databases. And qualitative is more, it will add more context, it will have more rich description. How do you go about it? You do literature reviews, secondary research, desk research, whatever you want to call it. You have focus group discussions, essentially like a group discussion, interviews, observations. And mixed method, like the name suggests, it involves both. It can come in any order. Sometimes you interview first and then look at data. Sometimes you look at data and then you, let's say, do interviews or focus group discussions to understand, okay, this is what this data meant. Or if this data is low here, this is more because of this and not necessarily because of, why is it low? So a very good example that I thought of right now is there is it's a program, an intervention, something called as it's a home visiting program. You offer support to mothers, pregnant mothers, mothers who have just had their babies. And so in one particular area, we found out that the take up of that program is not very high, and that was just simply because that area has lesser percentage of single mothers. They have their family support, and that was just the reason. So while it may initially seem like, oh, the take up is low and that's something we need to work on, but that's just not the need of that particular region. They just don't need it. So so that's the kind of, let's say, context that the qualitative survey adds. On the right here, it's not necessarily just for this. I've just added it's a list of databases that you may want to search your terms on whenever you're doing research. The most common one is, I think that's something that even I have used the most, is Google Scholar, but and articles from all of these or papers from all of these others will also pop up on Google Scholar. So it's not necessarily just these, but these are some of the credible databases. Something that I wanted to specifically mention is systematic reviews. So sometimes it's very useful if with your keyword just you add a systematic review. So for example, I'm looking at teacher training in India for secondary school teachers. And when I add systematic review is nothing but one paper which would have looked at exhaustive set of other papers. So there'll be that one paper which will have, they have reviewed 90 other papers. Of that, they found, okay, these many were credible policy papers and research papers, and then these many, and then they list down all the information from all of them. So it's kind of, in a very, very simple term, it's a summary from a lot of other papers you don't have to look at, or you can probably look at them and yet look at few systematic reviews, and you would have really covered your ground. So that's our policy research. Policy advocacy. Okay, just wanted to check if the pace is okay. If I'm speaking too fast, any questions now, or we can take them later?
No, we can take the questions after you complete the presentation.
Perfect. Policy advocacy, again, in very, very simple terms, your aim is just to influence, negotiate, you lobby to get support for your policy. The aim is to either bring about a change. We want to change the policy, you want a new policy. You also do the advocacy to make sure that you maintain the status quo. The certain amount of funding is going into something, you want that to continue, because again, things may change, right? Or you may, there might be advocacy just to support implementation. So something exists, there is no implementation. How do you do it? Whole bunch of lobbying, litigation, that is legal action, public education. You tell people that, okay, you know what? For example, the whole, during the COVID thing, the wash your hands, or you know what? Something that ASA report does brilliantly, like it tells you every year after year that this is the percentage of students in class 5 who cannot read class 2 text, right? So that's public education. And then of course, partnering with interested parties. You make strategies to influence policymakers. Here, there are multiple just things that I've listed. Starting even something as simple as starting a campaign. When you start a campaign to support someone's health or anything, that's also advocating for someone. So one of the simplest form of advocacy that exists and is very popular as of today is social media advocacy. We often feel strongly about something that's happening in the public space, and we express our thoughts and opinions on that. That is also showing your support or not against a particular issue. And this is something I found in one of the while I was researching for this. How do you go about the whole advocacy thing? You start off with something very, very simple. You set your priorities. There are so many things that are burning in the world right now. What is it that impacts you the most? What do you feel most strongly about? That is what you pick up and be like, this is even in that space, this is the exact small thing that I want to change or influence. You map your network, you look at your whole network and you see who are the people, charities, organizations, experts, academics, who are the ones who have similar thought process. And who will support you. Also interesting to, I think, also get the perspective of, let's say, someone who's not, just to understand what can be the barriers that once you push for your policy, what you will face then. So of course, always good to have that as well. Having your timeline, okay, by X, Y, Z, this is what we do. SMART goals, right? Then you pick your target. So amongst your network, then you say, okay, this is who I'll target now, this is who I'll target then. Different people help with different stuff. So it's very simple, make your case, choose how the ways you do it. So again, lobbying, public education, those are your different activities. Every whatever your timeline milestone is, you take a restock and you review your progress. That's more or less everything that I wanted to share about policy research, policy advocacy. Like I mentioned, this is not a whole lot of depth or a lot of expert advice here. I can definitely share a little bit more with through more of my work if you have specific questions. Something I wanted to share about policy research. I wanted to look at a couple of papers to see if we can kind of quickly go through that, have a look at that. Does my screen, has it changed or is it still the PPT?
No, it's the PPT still.
Okay, hold on. I have to share the screen. Screen. Do you see your paper now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so here, this is a research paper, as you can see, 40 pages long. You look at it, you have to review, let's say, 20 to 30 such papers, right? On average, 40 pages long. How do you go about it? This is obviously, I mean, you already see a very, very popular name. Something that I'm not showing here is when you find this on a database, you can see the number of citations and all of that. And you will know, okay, how many people have already cited this in their paper. Just very quickly, this is the abstract. I want to take a couple of minutes. This will be a very, very small activity. I want you to just type out 3 to 4 things in the chat, because that way everyone gets to respond. One is, where is this? So this research is about, this paper is about a research. So where has this research happened? So we obviously can see that it's about a cash transfer. So this is I think it's an RCT. So what are the different situations they have used? So one is a conditional cash transfer, one is a whatever labeled cash transfer. So the location, the type, different experiments they did, and who was the target audience? That's the third thing. And fourth, I'll type it out. And the fourth is, what was the result? What did they find? Just from the abstract, if you can tell me these information. Let's take 2-3 minutes to do that, and then you can just type it out. 2 more minutes to do that. Perfect. We'll just take 1 more minute. Perfect. Exactly. So we are looking at location. I really made it very simple here, but yes, we are looking at location. We are looking at who essentially your target audience is. Here we are doing, we're making the cash transfer to fathers of school-age children in poor rural communities. There are 2 types of what they are experimenting with here is more of a labeled cash transfer. So essentially conditional cash transfers are, you put a condition that if you come to school, if you're attendance is 90% and above, then you get this money each month. So that's a conditional of whatever the condition could be, that if you get vaccinated or you come for health checkups, XYZ, that's conditional. Unconditional is you're just giving money. Obviously, they think of how much money to give, what is it towards. They make some signs and examples. So, for example, if they're putting it in your account, it comes under, there's a name that comes for. So even it comes for like for my baby, obviously it has some impact on you that, oh, it's for my child, or for vaccination, things like that. So this was a labeled cash transfer. They did not say that you have to do this. You send your children to school and then we give you money, but they just labeled it as towards school participation, but it was not mandatory. And even something like that, what they saw was, the result was they saw an increase in school participation. More schools, students attended schools. So when I'm looking at this paper, I'm just quickly looking at my abstract. Again, depending on how much information you want, are you looking more for methodology? Are you just looking for evidence? If I'm just looking for evidence, I'm looking at, my organization wants to do a cash transfer. I am looking at, oh, is there evidence that giving cash improves educational outcomes or education participation, whatever it is. So then I obviously look at methodology to see how credible it was. Was it RCT as you know, gold standards for this? Little bit of background if I do want to know about that. Experimental design, it has different names in different papers. So methodology, just data collection, things like that. And then a little bit about what they did. So for example, here there's information of how much money was given, when it was given, how it was. So you gather all that information, quickly move on to then again, data. How did they collect data? Was it through a database? Did they do reviews, surveys? And this is some background information. The statistical analysis, how did they do that? The model. And then I quickly come down to my results, or like I said, discussion. So yeah, results here. Yeah. So they have different results, right? Results on basic math skills, results on participation, who did the program affect most. So again, even though it's like I said, long paper, again, not the longest, but those are just, look at abstract, look at a little bit of methodology, look at results. If you are interested, so the last part, which is usually a little bit of discussion, if it's a good paper, it will have a really good discussion, will give you really good understanding of, what are the policy implications. And also important to look at some point, they will mention the strengths and specifically limitations of the study, which will tell you, 1,000 people participated, but in the end, we could only follow up with 300 people. So that's good, important to keep in mind, that why were there so many dropouts? Why didn't people come back for responding to questions? Or the number of people who responded, is that a biased sample? A lot of things. So yeah, likewise, I have a few more examples. Not sure we need to necessarily look at them. And that's everything. If you find it helpful, I'm happy to go through more research papers. But again, just wanted to understand, I think there are 33 odd people here right now. Are most of you in undergrad or post-grad students? Assuming everyone's a student.
There are undergraduates as well as postgraduate students in this session.
Okay. And are people mostly studying policy or other?
No, I think there are students from all kinds of subjects.
Okay, perfect. Is there more that you're looking to understand about research? And I can speak a little bit more about research. I haven't specifically, I don't think I've worked in advocacy as such, but happy to probably share more information about research if that's helpful. If you have questions, I also have a list of questions that Abhishek shared with me earlier. Also happy to just go through them if that's helpful.
Yeah, we can start with the question round if that's okay.
Yeah. Yes, please. These are the ones that I already have, but or I don't need to share my screen for this. Yeah.
That was a very enlightening presentation, Pankhuri, and I'm sure that it helped a lot of us gain a lot of in-depth insight about policy and research. So now we can start with the questions round, and I would like to call upon Avni for the next few questions.
Thank you, Sneha. So, Pankhuri, your journey has been really inspirational to all of us here, and we would love to delve deeper into it. So, you studied BBA, then proceeded to LSE for your master's, and also worked with Teach for India. What encouraged you to pursue a career in education?
I think my answer literally here is as simple as I was just very, very interested in. I think I grew up with a very strong sense of not everyone has equal opportunities, both in terms of obviously economically, like I think I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a very, very small place. You could see, there were also all people from different economical background. You saw it every day on your way to school. It was not like, okay, you stay in some other area and others are just in a very, very different area. You saw it every day. So that was very, very, I think, visible that, okay, it's not. And then the kind of education I had, I felt that was very unfair, that just because you're good at math does not mean you are good at sports. And yeah, and so I think my lived experience played a big part in it. And I think the moment I found out about Teach for India, I was just like, wow, I have to do this. And I was very, very excited to be part of it, and I had a fantastic fellowship experience. Yes, it was challenging, and that meant I learned more. And I think you often ask that, what would you do better, or if you go back, if you have to redo it. I think I'm quite satisfied. I think I did a lot. I know that sounds very braggish, but I think I put in as much as I could at that point. Obviously, in retrospect, you're always like, oh, you could have done that better. So I think my good experience with the fellowship is what obviously motivated me to just stay in the field. I think education is something that I feel most strongly about of all the other social problems that currently exist.
That's really great. And based on your experience in education and your experience noticing the divides between in the way the education system specifically functions in India from your lived experiences, what do you think we should be focusing at right now in terms of policy towards making education more equitable? Are there any specific issues specifically for children from underrepresented communities to guarantee them success in later life?
Okay, that's a very, very loaded question. Thank you, Avni. I don't think I have enough insights to really comment on that. I can obviously, I'll just offer my very, very basic understanding of this, which I think a lot of organizations are kind of already working in it, advocating for it. But I think just the basic foundational, knowledge, like having worked with younger grades, like very, very young grades. I also used to go into the nursery classrooms to actually have taught class 4 and 5, and having seen even the class 10 of the school, of that particular school, it is sometimes just so surprising how students leave school after 13 years of education with a lack of basic skills, I would say. And I see that's a big focus in the current NEP. There are a bunch of organizations working in it, and honestly, I think I know we're setting the bar so low, but if we can probably just focus a lot on building foundational knowledge and skills, as well as I think having more established path of, okay, if not school, then what? Not everyone's meant to be in school after 10 standard or 12 standard. It just doesn't work for everyone because of their from their financial situation to just that's what they enjoy. Because honestly, I think even when it comes to changing the way we teach, it will take a lot to do that. And not just in India, I think that's just a problem everywhere. So there are children who will just not enjoy your typical reading, writing that way. So it's not meant for them. So can we have more I think established, non-stigmatized routes that this is what you do if that doesn't work for you? So I think two very extremes, one very early years, one more of secondary school, high school. But I think, yes, these two should be useful things to look at.
Yes. And on the subject of skills, I think everyone here in terms of policy research as well would love to know what are key skills you think you've developed in your experience with research that you think are necessary to be able to holistically look at the impact of a policy. What are skills that everyone as a researcher should have?
I think research in itself is a skill, and so the research, and it just involves you. I think one, definitely a lot of reading. I think being able to consume a lot of content quickly and being able to comprehend it. So that's obviously the step one of it. Step two would be to critically able to look at it and summarize that, okay, it's so much I read. This is so much I read from all of these different sources, and then this is what I understand from it. So definitely, I think quick comprehension, and then being able to look at everything you read critically and be like, okay, this is what I'm coming away with.
Thank you for that answer. Can you discuss any emerging trends or issues that you think that exist right now that policymakers and those studying policy should be aware of?
Again, I'm pretty sure all policy makers and research experts must be already kind of pretty aware of. But I think globally there is just a lot of focus more on quality of education now. We know everyone worked on improving access to education in the last 2 decades. A lot of countries are there. India is definitely there. I think right now it's just about quality of education, improving that. Again, I think in that there's a lot of focus on upskilling, teacher support, foundational skills for children. And I think I'm not sure if I can call it a trend, something that I find very, very uplifting that's happening in India is so all of this is expanding to other states. So I'm from Jharkhand, it was at one point Bihar, and seeing charities, social consultancies actually move to, let's say, Bihar. I know some Mantra for Change is working there, because you often hear of a lot of things that's happening in Maharashtra and a bunch of other states. It's not often happening in a lot of other states which need it so much. So I think that is something that I find very, very uplifting. I feel like that's something that should definitely continue. That again, you can sometimes call it access in a different way to, let's say, having expert consultancies, expert advice as to how can an entire state do better. So yes, that not specifically so much in education of a trend, but yeah.
Thank you for that answer. We really need access to education. The quality of it is really important issue, and we're glad that it's being addressed. What do you think are challenges that you've faced as a policy researcher, or challenges while working with children in your own experience, and how have you addressed them?
Okay, 2 very, very different questions. My time working with children was more on ground, and my work in research as of now has not involved directly children. But in something that we were discussing actually just this week at work was the challenges that you face in, for example, research, especially if you're working directly with vulnerable groups, which involves definitely children, even parents, is the amount of just the kind of stress that you put on them when you even involve them in your research and your study. And how do you address that? Even it may feel like, oh, we are just talking to you, but it is taking away someone's time, which they could be spending doing something else. So yeah, also just going and even trying to deliver a program, etc. It puts a lot of stress on people. So that I think that would definitely be a big barrier. Again, like I said, I haven't necessarily faced that in research yet with people directly. In terms of working with children, from my own work, I wouldn't call it it wasn't a barrier. It was just something that you struggle with, which is building that relationship with them, because the system has failed people so often, which includes teachers, which includes children, which includes the entire school system, that people obviously don't want to trust you, and for good reason. I think they have been disappointed far too many times, and I think so that's definitely one of the challenges, knowing how to build that relationship. But I feel like once you do that, things flow much more easily. There is a very, very great TED talk which we were also shown at TFI, but I think it was about this person called Rita something, where she speaks about every child needs a champion, or I think there was there's an example of poker chips where if you don't have anything, the child doesn't have anything to lose when they're in school. So they just act out. So that's what you sometimes need to give them something before you even take away. And that taking away here means that, oh, you are such a bad child, step out of the classroom. I don't want you to teach. And you expect the child to feel bad about it, but they don't, because this is another worst part of the day. Yeah.
Okay, so for the next few questions, I am giving it over to Shreyoshi.
Thank you, Sneha. Hi, Pankhuri. Can you share with us some examples of a policy issue that you want to work with?
That I want to
Work with?
work with. Okay, that's a sorry, but that's a very, very simple one-line answer. Definitely has to be, I think, either foundational learning outcomes, or like I mentioned, I think I'm interested in two extreme spectrums. So one is either early. So one is early years, like very, very early years, when we speak of, let's say, 0 to 3 years. And obviously the kind of home learning environment you are in impacts a lot of your development. So by the time you start school, you're already behind other students who come from advantaged background. So I think that is something I'm quite interested in. Also working in primary school, the low student attainment, and because having taught in primary school, and when I saw teachers and everyone used to go super wild when they're like, oh, students are in class 10 now, let's teach them so much. But if I think the data suggests that, the ASA report data, that once you are after class 5, your learning outcomes actually with each year, the gap increases. So for example, someone who's not learned to read in class 4, class 5, it only becomes more difficult for them to read. You cannot teach a class 10, not that you cannot, but it's very, very difficult for a class 10 student to learn phonetics, right? It's easier to do that with a class 2, class 3, class 4 student. So I think definitely the focus on primary school knowledge skill, I think is very, very important. That's the second thing. And I think third would be just looking at beyond school options, making it a more standardized process, I think, beyond after class 10, class 12.
And I have another question. How do you stay up to date on policy changes and updates in your field?
I think more than looking at organizations or things that I read, I think it's more about people. I think I'm so well connected with people on my LinkedIn. So there's a huge variety of obviously all TFI people and kind of people who will just share this. And obviously I follow a bunch of people, organizations, and everyone just, they post their things, you sign up to their emails, etc. So I don't have a specific, like, I read this particular, blog or policy paper. It just kind of happens through your work. And I think I make it a point to regularly be in touch with people who are working with different organizations, speak to them. I think that really helps me be a little bit in touch. Yeah. But again, I don't have specific examples for, I think, for you right now that, okay, you can look at this, but I know there are some great podcasts as well, but yes, no names that I can share as of now.
Okay, so Yashashvi, you can go ahead with the next questions.
Okay, thank you, Sneha. Ma'am, I wanted to ask that you also work as a consultant. So what inspired you to become a consultant, and what does your work as a consultant entail?
Again, a very, very simple answer to that. It wasn't really an inspiration or something to be a consultant. I think sometimes it's just the role, that's what it is. And just, I think, simply kind of understanding what a consultant is. It also means, I think, different things in different field. A management consultant and obviously the work and etc. is very different. You're just, usually it's either a short-term project, sometimes they just call it that. And you come in, I think consultant essentially probably just means that you have some level of expertise in a particular topic. And so you come in and then you just do that work. Usually can be very, very short term when you look at consultant, let's say either by the government of India or by international organizations like UNESCO or World Bank, they essentially actually mean that you are a short-term employee. You're not a permanent employee. You don't get all the benefits. So yeah, it's a very fancy, very a bit of a buzzword as of today in the I think even the government and the international development space. But essentially that's just what it means, that they don't want to pay you all the benefits. So they take you on as a consultant, and the work essentially you do is, again, you're on a expert in a particular topic, if not even necessarily I think an expert, but you just kind of work in a specific sector. That is more or less it. No inspiration behind it as such. I think they were just like that was something that I was applying for. That's what they called it. Went for it. And just to clarify, the MPA consultant bit that was at college during my degree, it's not a paid employment. It's part of your academic curriculum. They call it, again, consultant simply because I think it's a short-term thing. It's the same thing. You get like terms of reference. You get this is the kind of work they want you to do. You spend roughly 6 months working on it. You have a team of other students that you work with. You meet the client, you meet your supervisor from college at regular intervals, and then in the end you present whatever the 3 or 4 research questions were. You present your findings, you present a report. That's mostly it. I think more often than not, if you are more of a research consultant, your work in the end will actually involve like a 20,000 word report, as opposed to, let's say, an implementation consultant who will actually help implement something.
Certainly, ma'am. Your such a lucid explanation would have intrigued our budding researchers in the arena of consultancy too. So next question I would like to ask that since you are a practitioner from that field only, so what are other career scopes in policy research in India? If you can shed a light upon that.
I think just the roles and names, they differ so much. It's definitely one space is academia, someone who's interested to continue working and studying more. You work there. I think in terms of specific roles, I think it's research analyst, research assistant, all of that in academia. In terms of if you want to work in non-academia, I think then there's the whole foundation, think tank, charity space. I think the charities you will find more of the research plus implementation one than pure research one. I think pure research would be more of a think tank, maybe even foundation kind of work, where again, research analyst, research officer, all of that. I think even something like bigger organizations who have a lot of focus on research while also obviously working with them, they may call it, I don't know, program officer as well. But even then, I think it will definitely involve a good amount of research. There is a lot of focus now on quite evidence-based work. So whenever you say you are doing something which has been proven to give result, you are always definitely doing research behind it. So I think any work right now in India, even for except charities which are very, very on ground level, I think even, for example, with TFI, when I was looking for something that, okay, this is what works best for teaching this, that is also research. Obviously, you're doing it at a much faster and a quicker way, but it involves. So I think anything that is not completely on ground will definitely involve research. And then you have all your think tanks. I was actually looking at one center for CPR in India. What does that?
Center for Policy Research.
Policy Research, right? Yeah. And I was looking at some of their research papers. So yeah, I think definitely roles will them involve a lot of research related work.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for sharing such a huge plethora of opportunities in this career. Over to Sneha.
As you know, ma'am, most of us are undergraduates and postgraduates who are looking forward to making a career in policy making. So what advice would you give to individuals interested in pursuing a career in policy research and advocacy?
I think it's about skills. I think anywhere, any job that you apply for, we always look at, oh, this is what I have done, this is what's on my CV. It's you have to always just look at what is the employer looking for, what are the skills that they are looking for. But I think one of the scarcer skills obviously get paid more, are more in demand, are definitely quantitative skills. Not to say that good qualitative skills are not important, but I feel like just knowing how to do good research, how to come up with even a 2-pager of writing quality is quite a rare skill. And I simply say that because even I finished my undergrad in 2012. I went to a decent college. I don't remember ever producing any piece of writing except for during an exam. So when I came here for my postgraduate, and it was a struggle to like before every lecture you have to read at least anywhere between 4 to 7 papers, and they were academic papers, so they were even more text heavy than the ones that I have to read now. And they used to be again anywhere between 60 to 120, 40 pages long. And it was very difficult to even quickly go through them, learn how to read them quickly, have some takeaways, have arguments pro or against them. So I think whatever it is, the skill that you choose to go, any qualitative, quantitative, just have really good skills, be really good at that. So so looking at more of qualitative, being able to have the knowledge of, okay, this is the range of databases, this is a range of other data places that all this information is available. Being able read and being able to come up with a one short pager, because I remember during my interviews here, these were all activities. Sometimes they were timed activities that they gave you an hour. They were like, okay, you have to submit a brief to this particular whatever MP, MLA, and this is the topic, and they give you 4-5 reports, and you have to make sure you have all the key information in 250 words or 500 words. You have 45 minutes to do that. And anyone who wants to work with, let's say, I think people in the parliament or something like that, that's just how it will be. You will be pressed for time, and you have to prepare these policy briefs. So I think just being able to do that. Sometimes they give you not timed. They're just like, okay, here's this, create a summary and the key points or whatever. So I think being able to go beyond what's just factually on the paper is what's important, and being able to add your insights to it. And the other would be quantitative research. Not sure if the curriculums have quantitative research, if they teach software, statistical software. I think that's definitely a skill that's very high in demand. That's one of the most well paid. It is a very important skill to have. We need to look at data. So anything from Stata, R, Python, SPSS. If you are interested in data, please make sure you know at least one very well, and that will again really help. It sets you apart because most people don't learn. So yeah, that should help.
Okay, so it has been a wonderful session, ma'am, and thank you for sharing such insightful information. So now, Shashi, you can go ahead and take up the questions by the audience. So if anybody has any questions related to policy research and advocacy, do share your questions in the chat box. We can wait for 2 minutes, and then Shashi, you can take up the questions if there are any.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a great session. It was great speaking with all of you. Very, very well, very nicely hosted. Thank you for a lovely, very smooth running session. Thank you, Sneha, Yashashvi, Shreyasi. Yeah, I think that they cover everyone. I see there is a question. A better option than I don't think it's about a better option. It's just, I think I would probably be more about what you are interested in. That's my personal understanding. I think quantitative skills are more scarce. There are fewer people doing it. So that's just about it. But again, if that's not something you enjoy, and if you won't be able to do well in it, then no point struggling in it. But it's always good to have some understanding about it. So always good to know to interpret quantitative results. So yeah, at least that. It will, yeah, it's needed for even qualitative papers because you're reading papers and then we'll have these quant section. So you should be able to know how to read the the table, the data. So I am not sure how you arrive at the point that, okay, the data is actually different, because again, if you're looking at a credible source paper, I'm guessing that the data that they must have collected is credible data. Often the sources are like, let's say, your government, right? So Government of India, kisi website pe jaake I'm taking primary school enrollment data district wise. I would expect it to be one of the most accurate databases, right? So yeah, so I'm not sure. So find another data shows is actually different from what is, but okay, I feel like I'm probably not understanding the question very well. So one definitely could be everything when you do your own research, if you find that it's different from something that data shows. For example, that will help me understand a little better. In that case, what's the data to make the policy effective and efficient? For example, you find that, okay, some database says that student attend school, 90% of students attend school regularly. And when you go and you find that they don't, that's only 50% or 20%. Then that's something that you feed into the policy, right? That this is not the reality. Those are the changes. Then that's what you would advocate for. That's what you would research for. Why is it low? Was it particularly low when you visited? Is that's what the reason is all the time? Is it a particular season? Then you do that research. You find out why is it low. If that's actually the reality, then again you work on changing it. I'm guessing that would be a very logical process, but then again, it depends, right, where you work and what you do. Are you an independent researcher? Yeah.
Okay, so now I would like to call upon Arushin to present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sneha. I take this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of our organization's whole fraternity. I sincerely thank our speaker of the day, Ms Pankhuri, for taking time from your busy schedule and giving so many informative insights in this important session of policy perspective. The way you explained complicated terms of research with examples was really effective and also really easy to understand. And also thank you for answering our queries as well. I'm very positive that this session must have inspired and guided not only our interns of Policy Advocacy Team, but as a matter of fact, all the teams. Your journey itself was also quite motivating to many of us, as you realized almost 10 years ago that not everyone is as privileged as we are. And hence you got driven to the domain you're currently working in. So we really look forward to connecting with you for more such interactions in future. And thanks again, Ms. Pankhuri. Over to the hosts.
Thank you, ma'am. So here we can conclude the session.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Sneha. Thank you, team, for the session. It was great. Nice speaking to you all. Bye.
Bye.